politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening and welcome to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. I have the privilege of every week bringing you interesting people in politics and business and the arts. And in the last little while, I've brought you a Ukrainian opera singer and a Polish pop singer. And tonight I have a really unique opportunity because I ran across a couple of years ago Abhithi, who is a fascinating person because she is a physician by the day and an unbelievable Hindu and English singer, vocalist, fusion artist is what she calls herself, during her non-physician time periods. And what a fascinating combination to be a doctor, a general practitioner, and then have also decided that you want to become a singer.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Thank you for coming. You know, I've heard you sing a couple of times now. You've just got an amazing voice.
Thank you. Too kind.
No,
I try.
But you do. So, have you always sung, or is this something that you got into, or like, what's the story? I'm sorry, I don't expect a physician to be an incredible vocalist.
Well, I have to say, I've always loved singing, but when I grew up in Qatar, which is a country in the Arabian Gulf,
right.
I guess the focus was on academics. So I put the singing aside, but my mom was my first teacher. She's the first teacher who encouraged me to keep singing, even though I didn't go for official classes, at least pick it up from the movies, from the, the pop songs. So right. I kept at it in the background, but really focused on academics. It's only years later, once I established myself as a physician, I went through a burnout phase in my life,
right.
where I realized that I'd pushed aside the arts and was so focused on doing one thing, forgotten to live life, and actually went back to music as a stress buster, and voila, I was like, wait, this is not just a stress buster, it's something else for me. So that's where I decided to do
story.
Official.
And was it just too much work that caused it, or something else that was going on in your life?
I think it was partly my fault. It was about not balancing my life,
right.
and which is what we are taught these days as physicians. Physicians have a high burnout phase, suicide rate, and I think now we are more aware of it. So when we take on stuff, now we are more well-rounded. And I think it was my fault. I should have been more well-rounded rather than just 24/7
right.
focus on work.
And just, I want to spend most of the time on your singing career, but as a physician, that's like a bunch of years of medical school, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Where did you go to medical school?
University of Toronto.
Okay.
Yes.
And specialize in anything?
Family practice with low-risk obstetrics. So I used to do low-risk obstetrics up until the burnout phase, and then I switched to just full-on family practice so I could take up singing as my simultaneous career.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And so you sang when you were a teenager,
yeah.
And then you didn't sing for a long period of time, and then you got back into it.
Yes.
How is it getting back into it sort of mid-career?
It was actually difficult in the beginning. Now over the years it's becoming a little bit easier because you develop a certain vocal range if you have not trained it for a while.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with Hindustani or Indian music, there's a lot of high notes to hit.
Right.
And I've always been like a bass singer. And without the training, it was a bit hard to get back into the Indian kind of singing.
Right.
That was one thing. And I also wanted to do a fusion because both the Indian and the Western singing attracts me.
Right.
So I had to also get training in Western because of my enunciation, like the pronunciation. So it's more work than if I had started earlier on in life, but I love it. So I don't consider it work.
And you sing fusion, so you sing in English, you sing in Hindi?
Hindi, yeah.
Any other languages?
A couple of Indian languages. One is Hindi, the others are Punjabi, and there's a South Indian language called Malayalam.
Okay.
So those are the few Indian languages I sing in, but as of non-Indian, it's just English.
And if I could use the word genre,
yeah.
Is it pop? Is it?
That's something I'm still trying to figure out. Actually, I would call myself, as I call myself always, a fusion artist. So for now, genre I would call is a fusion artist as long as my music has a little bit of influence of both sides of the world. That's the genre I am right now focused on. But I'm actually experimenting with a lot of the Western genres. So I've done rap, I've done pop, I've done jazz, I've done a little bit of everything. still trying to figure out my way.
Right.
This year my focus is on original music, so I think I'll get to know a little bit more of which route I want to take on.
Right.
So I have actually 2 originals that I'll be releasing in the next couple of months.
Excellent.
And I've experimented with a couple of different genres, but both the songs have both Indian and Western influences in it.
So, you know, I've had the privilege of interviewing a bunch of different people on my shows, and one of the interesting things is I think a lot of things, fashion and politics and lots of things are fusions these days, where
Yes.
you're getting little aspects of different parts of the world, and maybe here in Mississauga the best, because we've got these people from different parts of the world that are coming together and exchanging different ideas and different cultures and different things.
Yeah, that's what's so blessed being in Canada, and especially in the Toronto GTA area, because you have a little bit of the whole world here. And I think that's where I also started to change focus when it came to the singing, because I realized, yes, I grew up with Bollywood music, I grew up with the Hindustani music, but there was a little bit of something in every kind of music that attracts me.
Yeah.
And that's why I started to delve into the fusion side. And the good thing about that is also then I get to collaborate a lot with a lot of different artists. Actually, there is a very famous Mississauga-based singer called the Prof. We actually collaborated on a Hindi, Latin, English, dancehall, rap, fusion song.
Really?
That was produced by a SOCAN award-winning producer, Medilandia. And we just released it a couple of months ago, and the response was amazing.
Excellent. And when you say release it, is it on a CD? Is it on Spotify? Is it on?
It's on all musical platforms.
Yeah.
So if you can look up my name, Abhithi, or her name, The Prof, and you will find it. The song is actually called My Way.
My Way.
Yeah, and our goal was to actually empower women like us, the Prof and myself, who are sometimes put into a box, like, you know, a stereotype box. Okay, you're a woman. Once you have your career, you get married, have children, and that's it. There's nothing else to do. And the song is about where we get to do whatever we want to do. So don't put us in a box.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Sort
So-
of fits with the sort of International Women's Day that's coming up soon.
Yes, exactly. So that is
Now,
part of the song.
in modern Toronto, Canada, do you really think females are put in a box still?
Not in Toronto. Well, we are not completely out of that, put in a box era. But if you compare from where I come from, say from India or from Arabian Gulf, or where the Prof comes from, it's still, we have not full-on revolutionized there yet.
Yeah.
But in our own lives, we still face that fit in the box, the conundrum, because even at home with my parents, they're okay now that I have gone into the music for a while and people are appreciating my music. But when I first started, it was like, oh my God,
You're a
what are you
doctor.
doing?
Stay doing medicine. I
Bingo.
can imagine the conversation the dad had.
Yes, exactly. And that went on for a while till people started to recognize me as a singer. And then now they're like, okay, fine, you can do it. But
Now, I have seen you in, I think, fashion shows as well.
Yes.
And so, you're not your typical doctor from a look standpoint and the way you dress and performing. So that's pretty atypical. That's you've crashed the walls of the box.
I tried to, and that also came out of a place of me accepting myself. So I went through that phase that I told you about, the burnout physician phase.
Yeah.
And I actually went through a phase of depression. And what I realized is I was not practicing what I was preaching to my patients, which I was telling them, you need to live for yourself,
Yeah.
not for others. And when I realized that's
You
what
were
I
doing
needed
that.
to do, that's when I
so
turned
you were
around.
being the physician for your parents?
Physician for my parents, for my patients, and not listening to myself. When my body was telling me, Abhithi, you need to take a break, take a step back, not just work, listen to others. You need to take care of yourself. And that's when I started to realize I need to listen to myself.
Yeah.
I went through a whole phase of depression, obesity, overeating, the whole thing, that I was telling my patients, this is what you needed to do.
You were obese?
Yes, I was.
Really?
Yes. And arts actually came as an escape for me, a stress buster and a healing for me. And when that happened, I realized it was much more than just a hobby or a stress buster. And I plunged right into the arts with singing, dancing, acting, modeling, things like that. And that kind of kept me well balanced with my physician life
Yeah.
and kept me sane.
You know, it's fascinating because I've interviewed a couple of different people that have gone through very similar situations. Someone sitting in your chair just a little while ago said almost the exact same thing, went through a massive depression, had gone through a separation and a divorce, and a breakup, and lack of success in their business. And it was the arts that got them through the problem. And it's interesting because I was a chairman of a task force. As you may remember, I was president of Mississauga Arts Council, and we had a task force on mental health. And one of the comments that were made to us by a child psychologist will stick with me forever. And I think it was, when words fail you, music can speak for you. Which I thought was pretty profound.
I totally agree. That's
anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a message, break for messages, and we'll be right back with, we're going to ask her to sing.
ब्रैंडफर्ड डाउनटाउन में इन्वेस्टमेंट का एक शानदार मौका। लॉरियल यूनिवर्सिटी कैंपस सेंट्रल लाइब्रेरी से चंद कदम के फासले पर। कॉन्डो प्राइसिंग स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम $300,000, बुकिंग विद ओनली $5,000, इजी एक्सटेंडेड डिपॉजिट स्ट्रक्चर, मिनट्स टू हाईवे, फ्रंट ऑफ द वाटर पार्क, 2 साल की रेंटल गारंटी, 1 साल की फ्री मेंटेनेंस और साथ में फ्री असाइनमेंट क्लॉज।
Buy a condo and enter to win a brand new car. To book a unit, call Adnan Shamsi at 416-788-7009 or visit grandbellcondos.ca.
आलमी तिजारत का नया मरकज गवादर का बाएतमाद इदारा न्यू विजन ग्रुप आपको दे मुस्तकबिल की कीमती सरमायाकारी का सुनहरी मौका। अमेरिका और कनाडा में रहते हुए सरमायाकारी और भी आसान। गवादर मास्टर प्लान की अहम और कीमती लोकेशन। गवादर की मरकजी शहरा और 0 पॉइंट पर वाक़या साहिल समंदर से करीब तरीन 100, 200, 300 गज के रिहायशी तिजारती प्लॉट, 1 एकड़ 2 एकड़ के इंडस्ट्रियल प्लॉट, निहायत मुनासिब कीमत और महाना आसानी के साथ में अभी अपने प्लॉट बुक करवाएं। मजीद मालूमात के लिए राब्ता फरमाएं।
Buying or selling a residential or commercial property is one of the biggest financial decisions most people will make in their life. The real estate lawyers at Alam Law Chambers will guide you through the complete real estate laws to ensure your transaction completes on time and your dreams come true. Reliable and affordable. Alam Law.
GTA Real Estate Investments. Pre-construction or resale. Consult trusted realtors. Get first access and incentives. Contact Khalid Aziz or Mashood Khalid, 647-865-2949.
You do not have to wait to protect your dependents and plan your estate. Ado Law will help you take the appropriate steps. Having a will is the most important thing you can do for yourself and your dependents. Not only can a will legally protect your loved ones, it can also spell out exactly how you would like things handled after you have passed on. Ado Law, the legal professionals.
I worked very hard to build this business. Now how can I protect it from creditors and minimize estate taxes?
My family depends on my income. What if critical illness, disability, or premature death happens to me? How will they survive?
For over 18 years, Zahid Syed of Arush Financial has been giving business owners and professionals sound advice on tax reduction, life and health insurance, and estate planning strategies.
Act now, I can help.
एयर विंग्स ट्रैवल एंड टूर्स नॉर्थ अमेरिका की सबसे बाएतमाद और फास्टेस्ट एयर ट्रैवल सर्विसेज। 25 साल का तजर्बा लिए लातादाद अफोर्डेबल ट्रैवल डील्स के साथ एक्सीलेंस इन कस्टमर सर्विसेज ऑन जस्ट वन फोन कॉल। ये है एयर विंग्स ट्रैवल एंड टूर्स। फॉर बुकिंग कॉल नाउ 1855-247-9464 or 905-272-2300. Air Wings Travel and Tours.
Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on the Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. We're having a fascinating chat with Abhithi, who is a fusion artist and a physician and a fashion model, and I don't know what else she does, but very involved in the community. She, in her singing, sings both English and in several different Indian languages, including Hindi. And I just asked her before the break if she'd consider singing a song for us, and she said yes. And it's going to be one of her original songs that she's going to be releasing soon, or have just released soon?
This one is actually especially for the audience.
Okay.
It's a New Year
song.
New Year song with a message
in both English and Hindi.
गुज़रे जो पल यादें बन गई ना उसमें रहना The new year is upon us Bring on zest, it's a fest Make the best, it's within us Happy
Excellent. Was it Bring on the Best?
Yes, Bring on the Best.
And Have Zest?
Yes, have zest.
I like that, have zest.
Yes.
And I think if we can all have a little bit more zest for life, and it's clear that you've got zest for life,
yes.
I think we'd be a lot more successful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I try to put a lot of messages through my song.
Right.
And like we were just talking about the song, I collaborated with the prof. It is about my way, so think outside the box, don't put us in a box. And the upcoming 2 songs also have to do with that, letting go of expectations and also living life to the fullest.
Letting go of expectations,
yes.
And living life to the fullest are the 2 songs that you're...
yeah, well, the titles are not that, but the first song
the theme is.
Yeah, the theme is that.
Excellent. Well, I think those are all great concepts, and good luck with them.
Thank you.
So, where are you performing now?
So these days I'm mostly performing at the Mississauga Arts Council venues, which include the Living Arts Center, the Mac at West Edge, in terms of concerts that are open to the whole public.
Yeah.
I'm also hired for gigs, which are more like private gigs,
right.
And that can range anywhere from the east end of Toronto as far as Scarborough. I've gone up to Burlington.
And do you come with a piano player or some Indian instrument or what?
So it depends on what the client
Indian
wants.
A sitar or something?
A sitar or tabla. Tabla is more common as a percussion instrument. So it depends on what the client wants. So sometimes it's on a track because they prefer more like an upbeat dance kind of vibe.
Right.
Some people like more like an acoustic setting. So usually I have a minimum of a guitarist and some kind of percussion, whether it be a cajon or a tabla player. And sometimes they want full on. Then I would add a bass player and a drummer.
Now, you say your fusion, and part of that song I would have described as pop.
Yes.
Down in Port Credit, a bunch of the bars have open mics. Have you ever done that?
Yes, and one of them is Rock and Dogs.
Yeah?
So yes.
So you performed at Rock and Dogs?
Yes.
How was that?
It's really good because again, on the nights we perform, we have music enthusiasts.
Yep.
So they're actually appreciating your music. Sometimes, you go to certain places where the client just hires you, but people are not there to appreciate your music. So it is. Especially the Mississauga scene, I think there's a lot of people who love music, and they're not just to enjoy but also appreciate music. And in those settings is where you get to collaborate with other musicians, and that's how I came across the Prof. And I've also collaborated on a rap song with somebody else, which I found again through one of these.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
One of these.
Well, that's one of the intentions of the Mississauga Arts Council, is to try to get artists to meet other artists and other people that can help them in business.
Yes, yeah, I know. And the Mississauga Arts Council, I must say, has been quite supportive. I remember my very first open mic where I was even worried about performing. This was the time where I decided to delve into singing more than a hobby. And it was one of the open mics hosted by Mississauga Arts Council. And at that time, I was only singing Hindi. I was not singing English.
Right.
So I was even worried to even sing in Hindi in front of a mainstream crowd. But they were quite supportive, and I realized there's a market for it if you present it the right way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, as you may know, I was an organizer of something called the Colors of Love International Concert, and the final singer at the last concert sang in Hindi, and a traditional Hindi type song, but to sort of a rock and roll beat. And it was spectacular. It blew the place away. It was wonderful. It was really quite enjoyable. And so I do think that people want to enjoy cultures from around the world. And, you know, in Mississauga, we've got that opportunity, whether it's, you know, rock and roll and pop down in Port Credit, or Hindi music or Spanish music, Latin music. We had a person on the chair that you're sitting in a couple of weeks ago played a Spanish guitar. And so I do think that that's one of the huge benefits that we've got in Mississauga.
Absolutely. And like we already talked about how music heals, and it brings people together, and then we forget about our differences, and it heals in a different way, because community is always something you fall back on always. Again, if I go back to the time in terms of my mental health situation at the time when I went through a depressive state, if I had not found those classes where I was doing my dances, my singing, maybe I would not healed naturally. Because as a physician, I know, yes, there is a place for medications, but before we get to there, we should try and see if we can heal from within. And to heal from within, we need that support from outside. So community always heals, and I find music, dance, any kind of performing arts that I've been part of has been like a great savior for me.
I heard a show with a bunch of physicians on a panel just recently, actually, talking about stress as a physician, and that they never felt that they could be vulnerable, because physicians aren't supposed to be vulnerable and aren't supposed to open up. And the physicians got into a task force, into a panel, and all opened up about their challenges and their problems, and they found that very therapeutic.
Absolutely. And I think I try to actually educate my patients more. I even share this with my colleagues. You know, you sometimes sit together and talk about the stresses, but I try to educate them as to how, at least for me, performing arts has helped me. Everybody has a different thing they need to find in terms of stress relief, but the most important thing is every day make some time for yourself, which is what I was not doing before I went through the burnout phase. It was all, the focus was just on work and not listening to that inner voice. So everybody needs to make that time.
You know, the other topic that you talked about, I find really interesting. This, I don't know, what do you call it, breaking down the walls, or
letting go of expectations, or
and you know, here you are a physician, so you've obviously got numerous years of schooling. You're obviously have to be smart if you're going to pass all those years. You're articulate, you're attractive, you're outgoing, you're personable. You're in Canada, and yet you felt that there were walls.
Absolutely.
And this other person, who is a prof, I presume, since she calls herself the prof?
Yes, she's a professor, she's a musician too.
Felt that there were walls.
Yes.
And I would have thought that in today's world, in Canada particularly, there's no walls for females. And yet someone as accomplished as you found that there were walls. And so I guess the question is, how do we break down those walls?
I think it has to come, first of all, from within. Part of the wall that is created may be from...
It's a personal wall.
It's a personal wall,
Really?
exactly. You grow up with certain values, and then you feel like you have to stick with those values because that's what you grew up with. And if you don't stick with those values, you feel guilty. So maybe part of the problem was that, like, if I were to let go of those expectations, I was feeling a bit of guilt. So to bury my inner voice, which was telling me, Abhithi, listen, these values don't speak to you, so you need to probably do something for myself.
Hold on a second. So the expectation was that you were going to be the physician.
The physician,
and
or
the values were that what you were going to be the
good
wife,
physician,
or
the good daughter,
physician.
the good wife, the good mom, don't listen to arts. That's just a hobby. You'll get over that phase. Do what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Make money, have kids, be a trophy wife. So just go.
Trophy wife.
Yeah, go with the flow of the society. That's probably what everybody kind of. We grow up with those kind of values. It is changing in this day and age, but if you look back to like 20 years ago. You grow up with those values, and then you think that's what you need to follow.
Yeah.
And if you have some inner voice telling you, no, maybe you don't fit within that kind of box,
yeah.
you need to break out, you feel guilty listening to your inner voice because then you're going against what you grew up with. So partly I think it comes down to you realizing it's okay. Just because your parents lived a certain way, or your siblings are doing something, or your friends are doing something, you don't necessarily have to follow that.
You can follow your own path.
You can follow your own path and still be accepted. Yes, there might be a bit of struggle, just like I had a bit of struggle with my parents initially, where, abandoning being a physician, what are you doing? You have a certain status in society, you need to stick with that. There'll be a little bit of struggle, but in the end, when you're happy with yourself and you are physically and mentally well, they will follow, because in the end what's important to them is that you be healthy.
Well, I think you've got a very important message, and you've got a great voice to be able to spread that message of empowerment and of breaking down walls. And it was interesting, I interviewed Tom Barlow, who's a rocker, Port Credit, 4-time Juno nominee, and he said that he loves playing music, but he said the other thing that he loves doing is creating social change. And he said some of the most important social progressions that we've gone through, or protest movements that we've had in the past, have been led by music. And he went through a whole bunch of examples of the music, of the freedom marchers, or of slavery, or different events in history. And he himself twice has come up with songs that spoke to things that he felt important about. One was the opioid crisis. Another one was rights for people. And music, he said, can be that message that can convey social progressivity to different people. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds to me like that's what you're doing.
That's my aim with my original music. Up until like last year, I was focusing on a lot of like cover songs and singing what others were singing. But finally, again, I told myself, listen to your inner voice. And with the great response that we had with My Way, I know I'm on the right track if I do music with a message. Yes, there's entertainment music too. I won't be giving that up because that is something that drew me into this. Yeah. But in the end, for my fans, I want to be able to speak to them through music, whether it's through the singing part, dancing part, acting, whatever it is, through the performing arts.
Well, this is a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I am reminded of that movie a year ago, A Star is Born, that you probably saw.
Absolutely,
where the old aging rocker comes to the beautiful young singer who's wowing it with cover songs, and she says, if you're going to sing, make sure you sing with a message and that you speak to your audience. And it sounds like you've got a message and you're speaking to your audience. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me.
So that's
Abhithi.
And check her out on Facebook, or go to one of her open mics, and go and support other musicians in our community that are deserving of your support, because they're trying to get their message out, and the only way they can get their message out is if we buy tickets to their events, if we go to the restaurants that they're performing at, and if we buy their songs. Anyway, Brian Crombie show on Canada 1 TV. Thanks for joining us. Good night.